you home? Hello?
Hey, mommy. Yeah, I'm home.
Any news?
Yeah, I quit at Spotify. I quit my job.
You did not.
That's Kareem Maddox, a podcast producer who left his full-time job twice to chase his Olympic dream. Most recently, he quit his successful producing career at 30 years old to try to make the U.S. Olympic 3-on-3 basketball team.
And this is where we have to come clean and tell you we initially recorded parts of this episode before a key moment in Kareem's story happened. This was back in May when the U.S. men's 3-on-3 basketball team was expected to be a shoo-in for the sport's Olympic debut. After all, they were reigning World Cup champions. Heck, the sport was invented in the United States by Dr. James Naismith. And then...
sometimes life just takes you somewhere else.
And it's game point. The Orange Lions are free throw make away from shocking the mighty USA.
Team USA was eliminated in Olympic qualification by the Netherlands, ending Kareem's Tokyo Olympic dream before it even started. So we can't technically say that Kareem is our new favorite Olympian anymore, but we can say his story embodies the Olympic spirit, because it's about risk, wins, losses, disappointment, and lessons learned.
But first, I'm curious, as a podcast producer himself, how would Kareem start his own story?
Oh, man. How would I start it? I think the best place to start the story might be with the decision to go to Poland. You know, this would be a complete break as far as a career trajectory goes. And then where are you going to be at the end of that year? Teams send guys home all the time when they're not performing. You know, in hindsight, it was the best risk I've taken.
Hi, I'm NBCLX storyteller Ngazia Kelado, and I'm joined by my trailblazing co-host, an Olympic fencing medalist, first American woman to compete at an Olympics in a hijab, and one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world, Ibtihaj Muhammad.
Thank you, Ngozi. This is My New Favorite Olympian, where we introduce you to some of the most inspiring members of Team USA. Not just because of how they're dominating the competition, but because of what they're doing when the cameras are off. And if there's one thing about Kareem Maddox, it's that he's always doing.
Kareem was always very active.
That's Kareem's mom, Iman.
Track and field, he tried, the high jump. Tennis he's not good at, but everything else, swimming, water polo.
But one thing always stuck.
He played basketball since he was 4 years old with his dad.
Kareem's dad was a huge fan of the LA Lakers, so much so that he and Iman named their son after Lakers legend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Because he said maybe one day he will be a basketballer. He had big hands and big feet. Kareem was a big baby.
Kareem Maddox wouldn't grow quite as tall as the 7'2" Hall of Famer, but close at 6'8". In 1996, Kareem, then 6 years old, went to the Summer Olympics with his dad in Atlanta. And competing in one became his dream.
Who else has a 25-year goal?
This is Kareem's younger brother, Jay.
He's always loved basketball. He's always loved practicing basketball. And that was his first passion and first love.
If he's passionate about that, he'll go all the way. I mean, when he loved Pokemon, we had to buy every Pokemon card.
Honestly, I can relate to that. If I had to choose a Pokemon for Kareem, it would probably be a Tyranitar, because he's 6'7", which is basically 6'8", because I think we can assume male Pokemon roundup. Also, he's versatile. You'll soon learn why that's important. But in the meantime, let's get back to Poland.
So when I came out of college, I played 2 years overseas, and then I started on my next career, which was in radio. I produced for NPR member stations around the country. And my next full-time job was as afternoon host of All Things Considered for the local statewide feed in Colorado.
Stories that matter, voices you trust. I'm Kareem Maddox. Thanks for being with us.
Here's a clip from his time there.
This began in 2010 with an inmate named Troy Anderson. What happened next? Long story short, a few months into that, I ultimately decided to quit and go back to Poland. and play one more year of professional basketball.
And to me, that was, it was a bit of a shock when he decided that he wanted to go to Poland.
Kareem's mom grew up in Sudan. Her mom is English, and she met Kareem's dad while working in Saudi Arabia.
So I'm guessing international travel wasn't the main concern.
Giving up a job for something just maybe just very temporary. But I knew he has that passion. So I encouraged him. I said, go for it. The worst thing you can live with is regret. So go ahead and do it.
So, age 26 now, building his career in public radio, he trusted his gut and did it.
This is KUNC 91.5 FM.
Last time we spoke to Kareem Maddox, the public radio announcer had packed his bags for Poland. And to save me a mispronunciation, what is the name of your team?
Yeah, it's Miasto Squaw Krasno.
Which means?
City of Glass, yes. And that's because it has a history of glass making.
I feel like I grew a lot in that year in Poland.
But that doesn't mean he never had doubts.
I think it's natural to wake up every day and ask yourself if you're doing the right thing. And this doesn't apply to sports necessarily. But when I was in Poland, on the one hand, I was seeing my friends who were in the States, had stable jobs, were starting families, were getting married, doing all this stuff that I just wasn't doing at the time. But the question was like, should I be over here at all? Or should I be doing what everyone else is doing, which is getting on with their life, moving past their sport? I think that in those moments are when you really have to reaffirm your decision.
One day in 2017, that happened in a totally unexpected way.
I was sitting on my couch in Poland and I saw the announcement that 3x3 was going to be in the Olympics, and playing basketball made it like kind of a no-brainer. Be like, all right, this is the clear next step for me.
After finishing the season in Poland, Kareem came home and landed a job at Gimlet Media, a fast-growing podcast network that would soon be acquired by Spotify for $230 million. And he somehow managed to successfully balance his career with professional basketball for almost 2 years.
I remember a stretch where there was like 3 tournaments in a month one time, and interfacing with my coworkers via Zoom or like whatever it was, Google Meets. But it was in the middle of the night where I was, and they didn't know where I was. Half the time I didn't know where I was.
3-on-3 basketball meets podcasting. Obviously very different career paths. But he was able to pursue both because they actually use some of the same key skills.
I mean, you have to communicate clearly. You have to over-communicate, honestly, on the court.
He's a great team player. He's very clear about when he's available, how he's available, what he can do, where he can help.
That was Sarah Nix, an audio journalist he's currently working with at Transmitter Media. We'll hear more from her later. Back to 3-on-3.
It's 3 guys, so there's no room for anyone to really be a specialist. And there's not really much room for, your team to revolve around one person. So if you have 4 guys on a team, 3 on the court at any time, you need everyone to be able to dribble, pass, and shoot at a high level in order to be good. So I think the best 3x3 players are versatile.
I used to say, you need to be tougher, you need to be this, why do you let them? He was very unselfish. He would always pass the ball. I said, why didn't you shoot? But he knew the game so well, and I suppose he knew his limits and what he was good at.
Kareem knew what he was doing.
Figuring out a way to, in a way like have your cake and eat it too.
Oh my God, Kareem. But why do you think you're going to make it to the Olympics or you don't know?
I'm not sure, but I'm going to try.
Oh my God, Kareem, you taking risks? You taking risks? Oh my God.
This is Kareem telling his mom in 2019 that he left his stable job at Spotify to train full-time for the Olympics.
Her reaction was funny because it was like, she was like, whoa, you're taking a risk, essentially. Which I've always kind of considered myself a risk taker. So that was like, I was like, whoa, that's kind of weird. But I guess, in some ways she's right. I think any risk that I've taken have always been like really calculated.
Do you have any kind of savings?
Yeah, I have some stuff saved. I think I'm good for now, but this is the second time I'm quitting my job to play basketball full time.
Oh, that's a story on its own.
I didn't really necessarily like want to quit. You know, I really loved my job at Spotify, and I felt like it was manageable. But at a certain point, you know, you just got to commit and dedicate. And I felt like January 2020 was the right time to do that at the time.
Of course, there's no way anyone could have predicted what happened next.
Well, we were actually in training camp for the Olympic qualifying tourney when we found out that that was going to be postponed. So we just kind of like wrapped everything up, went home, and just waited for news.
This morning, an unprecedented postponement. Olympic officials deciding the Tokyo 2020 Games won't happen until 2021.
And he had just given up, actually, the job and then not to go. That was really sad for him. I felt very sad for him. But I realized this has affected everybody.
I was wondering, how common is it for Olympians to pursue another career alongside their sport?
Yeah, it's not very common for someone to get into full-time work and to say, never mind, I don't want to do this full-time thing. I'm going to go over here and, you know, do this other thing that requires a good bit of my resources and maybe doesn't pay as well. But people do it. Like I said, when you know you have the potential as an elite athlete and you only get a certain window of opportunity to be able to go for it, it can happen.
That's Lauren Williams, who in 2014 became the first American woman to win a medal in both the Summer and Winter Games. She's also a certified financial planner and founder of the Worth Winning firm. About 30% of her clients are professional athletes.
The biggest thing about competing as an Olympic athlete is that you cannot compare yourselves to others or to other sports. So there's a vast variety of different ways that people are compensated or not compensated at all. And so I was very fortunate as a track and field athlete to be able to earn a good living. We earn our living mostly from shoe sponsorships. Shoe sponsorships, there we go.
That's the bright side of the coin. In the winter, Lauren competed in bobsleigh, which isn't as lucrative of a sport when it comes to sponsorships.
There are tons of athletes who have to, work full-time and also do their sport full-time. There's some that are able to do part-time. And I got to experience a little bit more of this and what it's like to not be fully funded when I participated in bobsled.
We see these stars shining at the Olympics, but we forget that they still have bills to pay. Olympic triathlon champion Gwen Jorgensen worked as an accountant at Ernst & Young. Sailor Debbie Capozzi worked at her family's Italian ice shop. Speed skater Derek Parra worked as a retail associate at Home Depot. Lauren says she often sees restaurant work in retail gigs.
One of the biggest things that I run into is this narrative that the only thing we are able to do as athletes is focus on our sport, that we need to give 300% and we can do nothing else. If you're an athlete who doesn't earn a lot of money, you still will retire twice, and you still need to plan accordingly, and you need to try to set something aside from a financial standpoint.
Kareem says he's been lucky to have this opportunity to compete in the Olympics and lucky to keep pursuing his chosen career, the one he started before the games were even on the horizon. He said Spotify helped him when he resigned, and he's also gotten support from the U.S. Olympic Committee and USA Basketball.
The 3-on-3 players here in the States all have normal jobs just because you only make money when you win or you finish in the top 5. You just kind of cobble it together.
There are a lot more expenses that go into training than people may realize. There's equipment, which really varies sport by sport. Then travel, housing, which is hard to justify if you're constantly on the move, and fueling your body with the right food.
The vast majority of Olympic athletes don't have enough funds to, pay for any extra discretionary things.
It's always a struggle, especially for athletes in lesser known sports like fencing. Fencing can cost more than $20,000 a year between the uniform, weapons, tournament fees, travel expenses. For some of my teammates, saving money looked like bringing food from home or even choosing not to go to team dinners and eating food in your hotel room instead, just to cut back on the costs of being on the road for long periods of time.
Seems like figuring out how to fund everything is a full-time job on its own.
Ultimately, most of the athletes that are competing realize that they're making a choice to do this thing so that they are, in fact, not doing another thing. I think a lot of people will be surprised at how educated some of the Olympic athletes are and, like I said, what their earning potential is outside of their field of play.
To me, it seems like the balancing act for both you and Kareem has required some major Pokemon moves. Do you think it'll be easier for Olympic hopefuls to find flexible jobs now that more people are working remotely?
COVID has created this new understanding that not everything has to be in person. So for athletes who are looking to make extra money, it'd be a great opportunity to be able to take different calls or speaking engagements with you on the road at competition in another country or even before or after training.
It's an unfortunate aspect of Olympic sports that for many of these athletes, there isn't a major salary or stipend.
That's Chris Smith, who covers the Olympics for Sports Business Journal.
Winning a medal is really the big difference maker.
A lot of my endorsement deals came after I came home from the Olympics and had won a medal. I would imagine having the opportunity to make money using social media would be a really big advantage in this day and age.
If you're an athlete, you might not be able to get that major Nike deal or that major Visa deal or Toyota. But maybe you have some people who follow you on social media, and some smaller companies might be willing to throw you $1,000, right, to do some stuff on social media to push their company.
Yeah, now more than ever, your social media platform is incredibly important. In fact, I've seen tons of people who don't perform particularly well that still are able to capitalize on the story that is being told because they're willing to be transparent and tell their stories.
The Orange Lions roar has never been louder as Team USA's campaign comes to an end.
So in your episode, you talk a lot about risk taking. How do you feel about just this last risk you took, which is the decision to quit your podcasting job? And is there anything that you would change about it?
I think that's a really good question. And it's something that I've been trying to grapple with a little bit. I think a lot of people would look at the decision and then look at the end result and be like, were all the sacrifices and compromises you made to give it a shot worth it? And for me, absolutely. That's just part of sports, really, is disappointment. And the thing you don't want to be left with is regret. And as of now, I don't feel like I have any regrets.
So since graduating from Princeton, Kareem has bounced between basketball, radio, basketball, podcasting, and basketball again. Guess what he's doing now?
Kareem is working with us to make a podcast about the Olympics.
That was Sarah Nix. She first met Kareem in late 2020 to talk about a podcast called The Greatness that they're producing with Universal Content Productions, which is owned by NBC Universal, the parent company of NBCLX.
The story of disappointment and failure is one that's super valuable too. That's not the worst thing in the world. I think that is valuable and teachable. And hope that I can spread that message somehow.
So as a producer, how would you end this episode now, the ending of your podcast?
I think that I don't know if there is an end yet. I think that it's ongoing.
And nope, Kareem is not done juggling basketball, work, and life just yet. He says he already has his eyes on the next Olympics in Paris in 2024.
At some point in the future, I will slow down. I'll have to, whether that's, I don't know, I'll have a family, or I just will have more commitments, or I'll have to stay closer to home, or whatever the case may be. I'm not sure. And so now it's an opportunity to just keep it going and keep it moving.
Go back to the My New Favorite Olympian feed right now to download last week's episode. Alex Kleiman thinks it's time to destigmatize women's health, period.
While you're there, follow My New Favorite Olympian and binge all 5 episodes for free.
If you liked this episode, please consider leaving us a rating and review. It will help other Olympic fans discover their new favorite Olympians.
This episode of My New Favorite Olympian was produced by NBCLX. Ibtihaj Muhammad and I, and Ghazia Kelado, were your hosts. The producer and editor was Megan McDonough. Fernando Hurtado was co-producer. Seth Rubenroy was the supervising producer. Jeremy Berg and Matt Goldberg served as executive producers. Tony Pierce was the motion graphics designer with support from Michael Katowski. Cody Broadway and Mackenzie Bain served as directors of photography. Stephen Dawson was the media manager and quality control editor. Special thanks to Katie Baldwin for booking support.
This broadcast is presented by the authority of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee.